and welcome to North American Ag Spotlight. I'm Chrissy Wozniak. This episode shines a light on a challenge that many in our industry face, but few talk openly about: mental health in farming. The Florida Farm Bureau Federation has just released its first ever statewide mental health report, conducted in collaboration with IFAS Center for Leadership and the Mind Your Melon Foundation. This survey is sounding the alarm on the emotional toll that hurricanes, financial pressures, and really the daily stress of farming are taking on Florida producers. Today's guest is leading the charge on this issue, Jaime Jerrels, Senior Director of Policy and Outreach at Florida Farm Bureau. She spent over a decade in agriculture policy. She's now using her voice, her platform, and her deep roots in Florida agriculture to advocate for better access to mental health resources and to break the stigma surrounding farmer well-being. So let's dive into this important topic with Jaime. Welcome, Jaime, and thanks so much for being here today.
Oh, it's my absolute pleasure. Thank you for shining a light on a really important issue.
So tell me a bit about your background.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Jaime Jerrels. I was raised on a small rural community and on a farm in Levy County. I was heavily involved in the FFA in high school. That culminated with a year of service as a Florida FFA state officer after graduation. It was during that FFA state officer year that I realized how I wanted to channel my passion for production agriculture. My small family farm wasn't big enough to sustain two families and being profitable. Therefore, I determined that I wanted to represent my dad. I wanted to be his voice, and I wanted to be the farmer in the field. I wanted to be the voice for the farmer in the field. A lot of our farmers and ranchers are one-man shows or one-woman shows. They do everything from work in the office to drive the tractor all day to check the cows themselves. So they don't have the time to advocate for themselves or to be their voice and voice their areas of concerns or issues. And by God's grace and his timing, I was placed at Florida Farm Bureau working in policy for an organization whose motto is to be the voice of agriculture. So I felt like that was my sign from the Lord that I was in the right place, that I was truly doing my life's work and what he had placed me on this earth to do. I am now the voice for my dad, but not only my dad, but my husband as well, who's a full-time rancher, and then all Florida farmers and ranchers. Currently, my husband and I live on our family's farm in Levy County, the farm that I grew up on. My husband's a full-time rancher. We run crossbred and purebred cattle, cow-calf operation. And we have leased pastures in Levy, Marion, and Hillsborough County. We also raise 5 children on that farm. So we like to joke that we raise cattle and kids. But yeah, I grew up with the passion for production agriculture and have been blessed to find a place in policy that I can advocate and be a voice for those who can't be a voice for themselves.
Well, that's amazing. I love it.
Yeah.
So let's start with the big picture. Why was now the right time to launch Florida's first comprehensive farmer mental health survey?
That's a great question. Having worked in policy for over a decade, I know firsthand that it takes the right people in the right place at the right time for things to be actionable and successful. And therefore, when American Farm Bureau announced a year ago, their president announced a year ago that they were starting the Farm State of Mind initiative, we knew that we wanted to take a leadership role in that space. American Farm Bureau was approaching state farm bureaus to conduct research in their own states about this topic of mental well-being in farming and ranching and in rural communities. We were approached by several people in Florida that also wanted to partner in this space. And so we were blessed with the dream team. We have a UF researcher at the time, Dr. Carrie Baker, who did our survey and compiled all of our research results. She has a background in production agriculture. She had a passion for this topic. She had been personally impacted. Her family had been personally impacted by a mental health case. And so it was near and dear to her heart. And really a lot of our team was led by heart in this topic. Also, a UF researcher that was on our team was Dr. Sarah Bush, who was the graduate advisor for Carrie while she was doing her research. And then we had the partnership with UF IFAS Center for Leadership with Chrissy Wozniak at the helm. They really assisted us with funding and a partnership as well for oversight. And then the Mind Your Melon Foundation, friends of mine, dear friends of mine, and active Farm Bureau members, Marshall and Taylor Sewell, are the founding members of the Mind Your Melon Foundation, focused around mental well-being and mental health in farming and ranching. And then finally, on our team, Jared Lanier and myself at Farm Bureau kind of culminated that team. And we really had the right people who were passionate about this topic with the right network of how to disseminate this information across the state and the resources to get responses from the true community that we needed to get actionable results from the survey. So again, the first of its kind in Florida, we wanted to break that ceiling of silence of talking about this topic.
Yeah, that's great. And what were to you the most surprising or concerning results about the survey?
Sure. I would say a precursor to that is I think what we have to take in mind is the survey responses for this were received within 3 months in the fall of 2024. And if you recall, we also experienced three back-to-back hurricanes during that timeline. And so we kind of had to take into account that was a very stressful time for Florida farmers and ranchers. And so the results showed that, right? Almost 67% of respondents reported feeling sad or depressed at least once in the past 3 months of taking the survey. So 67% of those actively involved in farming or ranching were feeling depressed. And we know that's a precursor of suicide ideation. And so that was a definite wake-up call. I think what gave us resolve in the results were that of those 67% that were feeling depressed or sad, 9% of them, only 9% of them, had suicidal thoughts at least once in the past 3 months. While 9% is a scary number for these respondents, and it's definitely a number we need to pay attention to, we also felt as if our reaction to that number needed to be positive and proactive. It was going to give us the ability to play offense in a space that agriculture hardly ever gets to play offense, right? We're putting out the next fire. We're being very reactive to any issue or new regulation that comes upon us or weather event, things that are out of our control most of the time. But we felt at Florida Farm Bureau and with this team that with a number like 9%, we had the ability to be proactive and play offense and provide farmers and ranchers with the tools to manage their stress, to reduce that 9% number and hope that we can get them support before thoughts of suicide ideation occur.
Yeah, and I also live in Florida and can attest to the stress that comes when there's a hurricane bearing
Yeah.
down on you. And we went through Ian as a family, and with the direct hit. So
Right.
even just with just a house and my quarter-acre garden, having to redo everything is just,
Yes.
it's monumental.
It
And
is.
knowing a lot of producers in Florida that have gone through multiple hurricanes, this is just not just real, but it's just monumental to overcome. Even just waiting, those days when they first announce a hurricane and it's coming towards you and you have to prepare, that feeling is just awful. Um, what
Yeah.
kind of tools, like what do you say to those producers that are handling that stress, especially beforehand, as this year they're saying it's going to be another active hurricane year? What are some of those tools?
Yeah. You know, the thing about Florida and being surrounded on three sides by water is it's not if, it's when we're going to be
Mhm.
hit by a natural disaster, hurricanes being, the number one. Um, you know, and the impact of a hurricane is just the start of a snowball effect. on the mental well-being of farmers and ranchers. It's beyond the physical destruction, the flattened crops or the ruined infrastructure. It's also a prolonged period of uncertainty with, economic uncertainty, with market volatility. It's emotional stress, and you're being, dislocated from the community that you may rely on to talk through this stress. Farmers and ranchers' livelihoods are tied directly to the land. Therefore, the loss of physical things it's not just financial, it's also deeply personal. Um, and, with every storm becomes that fear of devastation, but also the dread of repeated trauma. Rebuilding efforts can take months or even years. And for many, any of the assistance from insurance or federal aid fall deeply short of making them whole. Debt amounts, and then you also have your yields dwindle, feelings of helplessness set in, anxiety and depression set in. And that's all compounded because in rural areas and with farmers and ranchers, often if they're struggling with mental well-being, it's seen as a sign of weakness. And so what we want to do is talk more about this topic so that they feel open to reaching out for support. And the results of this survey really showed us that, it's natural disasters and weather events that cause stress. It's saving for retirement, market volatility, balancing home and work life, lack of public understanding of agriculture. All of those are top stressors. But what you notice as a commonality is all of those are things that are uncontrollable, right? That the farmer has hardly any control over. And then on the flip side of that, we've got the top stressors and the data, but what's the actionable parts of the survey is the support systems that farmers and ranchers prefer. What are resources that they're actually going to take advantage of? And what the research shown us is that a community, a network of people to listen to them, whether that's reaching out through a social or recreational group, or whether that's counseling through clergy or their church. They also told us in the survey that they would be open to a telehealth appointment, a counseling through telehealth or consultation. And what they really would not take advantage of on the other side is a farmer-specific hotline or outpatient health services, anything that they would have to go in person for and be seen. So what we want to do at Farm Bureau is we want to communicate to them that, joining Florida Farm Bureau and our association gives you a community of people to support you, gives you a network of friends and community support that you can reach out to and talk to, and that people would really understand because they've been there themselves. It really all of this really speaks to the existing programming that Florida Farm Bureau has. We just want to ensure that when we're planning our in-person events, that we're considering these topics for your breakout sessions or your guest speakers. We've had Marshall Sewell with the Mind Your Melon Foundation speak at our annual meeting. We've had him speak at our Young Farmer and Ranchers Conference. Just bringing light to this topic and making it a consistent topic of conversation so that more people are comfortable.
Yeah, that's really good. And I have to also point out that the telehealth especially is such a great tool. And I'll just tell a personal story from when I was younger. My dad always suffered from chronic depression. So this is a very,
Oh, yes.
very close to my heart issue. And at one point, myself and my siblings didn't know what to do. And we knew he was going to take his life. So I actually called one of those numbers, and they step by step guided me through what we needed to do and where we needed to take him. And thank God it like that did save his life. And he's passed on now. He passed away of cancer many years later. But I owe an extra 10 years of his life to, because of the telehealth. It's instant. So people should remember, even if you're not the one suffering from depression, that those family members around you just keep in mind there are those resources. You can call somebody who knows what to do, even when you feel like you have no idea and you are so out of control of the situation.
Thank you so much for sharing, Chrissy, and for being transparent with your personal experience. I think personally that's what's been the most surprising about spending time in this topic is that no matter who you talk to, when you discuss this topic, they have been touched by mental illness in some way, shape, or form. If it's not like an immediate family member like you, Chrissy, it's a family member somewhere down the line, or it's a close family friend, or it's someone of your church. There's so many examples out there of how we've all been personally touched. Suicide is in my family. I had a great uncle, take his life, and I had heard my grandparents talk about that growing up as a child, and thankfully I had a family that talked about it, and were open about the struggles that he faced. But a lot of people don't. They really don't spend the time to explain that and explain, how a person gets to that point, what can be done. And so that's the goal, right? That to make people feel comfortable about sharing their stories. And we know people share one-on-one way more than they will share in an open setting, right? You form a relationship with someone or a connection, and they're going to open up more and share. And that's what Florida Farm Bureau membership gives them, is that those people, that community, that relationship.
Yeah, that is so important. And even though we're more connected these days, it seems like we're more alone. And that's why I was happy to see in the report too, this community focus, and whether that's your church, whether that's Florida Farm Bureau, we really have to go back to, not just, sitting on Facebook arguing or Twitter or whatever. But I think especially true is, and I think I'm seeing a bit of a resurgence back to the church. Our church is growing, and it's that's one very important place, to have a group, a community surrounding you, but also focused on something higher than ourselves. And yeah, I just think that that's amazing that was also included in the report too.
Absolutely. And our team in synthesizing the data afterwards, we were so proud of the work that we did, and we're thinking of long-term actionable items and how we could work together, to create real change in this space. And all of us are parents. And so, well, the majority of us are parents. And so we also think of it through that lens, and our pastor at my family's church mentioned in a recent sermon that, it used to be that if the father would bring the family to church, you could save the family. But it really, and that probably is still the case today, but he's seeing the transition to if the child brings the family to church, it will
Yeah,
save the family. And that was just
isn't that
huge.
crazy?
It
Mhm.
really was. And I have 5 children, and it really is true. When you have a child get on fire for Jesus, it changes your entire family. And so I just think about this topic in the space of children as well, and including our efforts into educating children about this space, and talking about this topic more so. And Mind Your Melon Foundation has a book that they've recently released, a children's book about mental well-being, and, just making sure that it's a comprehensive approach. It's not just focusing on our farmers and ranchers who are, in their 60s. The average age, of an American farmer is of that age, but also focusing on your young farmers and ranchers, and focusing on our children, because they are the sustainability of agriculture, right? If you gave one definition to the sustainability of agriculture, it's our youth. Because without our youth going into farming and ranching, we don't exist. And so we need to keep them in mind too for the future.
Yeah, for sure. And as somebody who's spent over a decade in policy, when you're putting all of this together, has your approach to advocating for farmers changed in light of the findings at all?
It's a good question. Um, I don't know that it's changed my approach. I will think that it has solidified some of the strategies that we have implemented in the past. I mentioned before, right people, right place, right time. And that was no more clear for me than in this effort. If it had not been for Carrie Baker and her efforts in research, and her tenacity in completing this project, it wouldn't have happened. If it hadn't have been for Mind Your Melon and their network in mental health in that space, it would have never happened. If it had not been for Florida Farm Bureau's financial support and in-kind donation of staff time to this, it wouldn't have happened. So that is how we approach policy implementation as well. You have to have all of those three things in place, but also you have to speak to the intrinsic motivations of a decision maker. We all have our own passions. We all have our own purposes in life and things that we want to accomplish, and how we give back to the greater good. And a lot of times we have to ensure that Florida Farm Bureau's policies align with that in an elected official. If it means something to them and means something to us, we're going to be the right people in the right place. And then we just have to get the right time put together. So I think it's just reiterated some of our strategies. I do, and I think you mentioned it, Chrissy, it has made me realize that we need to get back to that in-person communication. We do a lot of things through technology, and I'm grateful for it. It makes us much more efficient, and sometimes productive, but meaningful conversations on really hard topics don't happen electronically. They only happen when one is comfortable in a setting, and that oftentimes is on farm, right? And in a topic this tough, they have to be in their comfort zone to be able to open up about a topic. And so we have to go to them, right? We have to meet them where they are to talk about really tough topics. And so that has just reinvigorated our efforts on farm tours, which we do a plethora of, but getting people back to the farm level, getting elected officials back to the farm level to firsthand experience it.
That's great. If you could say one thing directly to nation's producers, because all of these issues aren't just Florida, these are across the nation.
Sure.
If you could say one thing directly to them listening right now, and those who may be quietly struggling, what would it be?
Ooh, that's a tough question. I'm going to try not to be too religious on this one. And you might have to edit this response, Chrissy, but if there was a farmer or rancher struggling today with thoughts of depression, sadness, suicide ideology, or really just having a bad day, and you don't want to put a label on your feelings, but it just feels like things are crashing around you and nothing is going right. I would say that first and foremost, you have to remind yourself that you're a child of God and that the blood of Jesus runs through your body. And so you are stronger than even yourself realizes, number one. I would encourage them to reach out to the Lord with a personal relationship and a conversation through prayer. And then I would encourage them to seek out those closest to them. The people closest to them are going to have a heart for them because they have a personal relationship. And when they tell you they listen, or if they promise you they will pray, without a shadow of a doubt that they will. I've been through personal experiences in my life with my children that we needed significant prayer, and so many people will tell you, I'll pray for you. I'll pray for your son. I'll pray for you. But there are those select amount of people in your life that you knew without a shadow of a doubt that you could count on them to pray for you. And it's the people that didn't just ask if you needed help. They show up anyway. They do it anyway. And so I would encourage those people, if they're having any of those thoughts, to reach out to that knit group of people, that small relationship or community that they have. Reach out to them directly first, because you're going to feel most comfortable with them. But also, if you feel ashamed because you're having these thoughts, realize that there are resources for you that you can utilize that no one will know about. No one has to know that you've called a telehealth line. That can be completely confidential. No one has to know that you go in person to talk with someone. You may not want to do it in your home community because you're fearful of someone might know you or know someone who knows you, right? We all live in rural communities with really small amounts of people, but you go to a neighboring city, or you have a telehealth appointment with someone that you've met in person. You don't have to go within your hometown or the nearest city to you. You can go elsewhere, have that telehealth visit, and keep it completely confidential. If a hotline works for you, you can call 988 at any time, any place, in any state of well-being, and call them and talk to someone immediately. That is there. But I encourage them to do that themselves, but I also encourage everyone listening to be the people to help those in need. Be the type of person that is approachable for something of this magnitude. You always say you're either the person on the carpet that they're holding up, or you're holding a corner, right? You're holding a corner of the carpet that's holding everyone up, or you're the person sitting on the carpet. Be one of those people, and it will change. You will either be a person holding up a corner of the carpet, to help them in their time of need, or you're the person who needs to sit on the carpet. It's one of the two. And don't ask, just do. Don't ask if they need help, just show up and do it. And that's in my personal experience when I went through trials and tribulations, is it's those people that showed up even when I didn't ask. I want to be that type of person. And I would encourage everyone to do that as well.
Yeah, that's great advice. And it leads me to my last question.
Sure.
Why do you do what you do? What did God put you on this earth to accomplish?
Yeah.
You're obviously a bright light.
Oh my gosh, that's probably one of my favorite topics. I talk a lot to high school students that are interested, or college students interested in policy, and they all enter it for different reasons. I've talked a little bit about why I entered policy. It's because I wanted to be the voice of the farmer in the field. I wanted to represent them at meetings that they were not in. There's the old saying, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu.
Yes.
And so I very much am a proponent of that. Like, you have to be sitting around the table, involved in the discussions, to be represented and to create change, positive change at the farm level. And so I get to be that person. I get to be that person that sits in rooms where the farmer might not be the favorite person. The farmer may be being attacked. And I get, to tactfully and respectfully represent them. I don't know if you can tell, but I'm really passionate about production agriculture, and I grew up in it. I'm in it today personally with my husband's business and owning cattle. But I do what I do because without agriculture, we have no future. Agriculture sustains us in every way, shape, and form. And therefore, without it, we will become dependent on other countries. Agriculture is a national security issue. If we're not able to support ourselves, the food, fiber, fuel, and resources that come from agriculture, then we will be dependent on others, and that becomes a national security issue. And so the future of agriculture is really important to me. That's why I invest a lot of time in youth activities through FFA, 4-H, and others, because we have to get more students involved in this industry to help it be sustainable. But I do what I do because I want to be the voice for those who don't have a voice.
It's very honorable, and it's so great to talk to you. Thank you so much. I'm very excited about this, about this mission, and really grateful that you would join me today.
No, thanks all to you, Chrissy, and for again taking time to talk with me, and to learning more about the survey results. For those listening who have not reviewed the results, I would encourage you to visit Florida Farm Bureau's website and the Mind Your Melon Farmer Wellbeing Survey. You can peruse the results for yourself. There's a high-level executive summary that's easily digestible, and we hope that you will all consider becoming involved.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. And thanks to all who are watching or listening. If you want to learn more, all the links are provided in the show notes. Don't forget to subscribe to North American Ag Spotlight on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, Listen Notes. If you prefer video, you can find us on Rumble or our website, and really wherever you listen to podcasts. If you like this episode, I'd love it if you shared it. And have a great day.